Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Cunningham. I'm the Women's Advocacy Council Coordinator here in Simcoe County under the Women and Children Shelter of Barrie. Today with me, in part of our series interviewing women candidates here in Simcoe County, we have Aleesha Gostkowski, who is the NDP leader for Barrie-Innisfil. So welcome, Aleesha. Thank you for taking the time to be with us here today.
Thank you for taking the time to interview me today. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm excited to chat today.
Excellent. So one of the questions that I'm asking everybody, what has inspired you to run in this election?
Absolutely. So I've got quite a few different reasons that inspired me to run, but I think that it can kind of all be chalked up to one thing, and that is honestly fairness, equity, and empowerment. I actually helped with Angelique Belcourt's campaign in 2019 in Simcoe North, and to see a young woman running for office, she was my age at the time, 24, and to see her do that, and to see the power and the conviction that she had, and to see just how much she inspired young folks, it made me realize that this is my time, this is my chance. So when I was approached by the Barrie-Innisfil NDP to run, it was a no-brainer. I just said yes, absolutely, this is time. I think that with everything that's going on right now, with how divisive everything is in our society, it's time to bring folks together. That has been my goal. That has been my ultimate, that's what I want to do. I want to bring people together. I'm from Innisfil originally, but lived in Orillia for a while. So I've kind of been working all over Simcoe County, but Innisfil is my home. And that's why I wanted to do this work here. We need it. We need the change. And we honestly need some inspiration right now. So I'm glad to be that.
Absolutely. Well, again, congratulations. It's so amazing to see so many women stepping into the politics here in Simcoe County. And so what have been some of the challenges, maybe some barriers, your experience so far with this election? And it's quite a quick turnaround as well, especially this year. So what has been some of your experiences so far?
Absolutely. This is a really great question. I appreciate you asking this. So I'm a young woman. I'm 24. I'm also bisexual, and I present as female, but I'm non-binary. I use she, her, they, them pronouns, and I find that, unfortunately, due to the fact that politics has been so dominated by men, it is hard to break down those barriers as a woman, especially as a young woman, to be taken seriously. I have colored hair. I have a nose ring. I don't necessarily subscribe to the formal attire. I do wear nice clothes. I like wearing nice clothes, but I don't necessarily subscribe to the suit and tie look. So because I am not a man, I unfortunately am under a lot more scrutiny about the way that I look, the way that I present myself, what I wear, how I talk. And I just think that it's really important that we take a step back and we think about the policy and not necessarily the person. I mean, yes, the way that the person presents themselves is really important. Absolutely. I understand that completely. You are voting for somebody to represent your community and your riding, but I'm an educated young woman. I have a political science degree. I've spent a lot of time in the institution, and I've also spent a lot of time in the community doing work. I've done a lot of service work. I've done a lot of customer service work, which I think everybody should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Absolutely, right? I mean, once you've worked in customer service, you can kind of handle anything, I think. I have a degree in political science. I have a degree in criminology. I've worked in the community. I've organized a lot of community events. I organized 2 Black Lives Matter rallies last summer. My goal is inclusivity, equity, and equality. And I think that it's really important to look at the person's policy and look at what they stand for and not just assume what a person stands for by the way that they present themselves. Like, sure, I'm a young woman, but that doesn't mean that I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And that doesn't mean that I'm not prepared for this. I'm certainly prepared for this. I have different kinds of experience that I can bring to the table. And I also think that it's time that we break down the barriers and break down the doors for young people to get involved in politics, because politics is for everybody. Politics should be accessible. The more that you get young people, especially women, involved in politics, you're going to see less of this cynical politician, and you're going to see more a change. You're going to see more drive. You're going to see more inspiration. Every person that I've spoken to, every woman candidate that I've spoken to has so much passion and drive, and you can hear that in their voice. And I think that it's really important that we take that into consideration. You know, sometimes it's okay to be different, and I think that it's time that we celebrate that rather than talk down or brush that off.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know you are currently also completing your social justice master's degree as
Yeah.
well. So that's amazing, and congratulations on that. So what are some, you were mentioning some policies and that, what are some issues that you are wanting to address here in, especially in your writing as an NDP leader? What are some things that you're wanting to improve upon and or make changes and or make space in? What are some of those issues?
Absolutely. So this is going to be a bit of a long one because there are a lot of things that I want to touch on here. But first and foremost, I think inclusivity and equity. Those are two things that I really want to focus on. We need to make space for folks, and we need to ensure that everybody has a space to allow for themselves to be heard and to grow and to have access to the things that they need. We need to increase social services. We need to increase mental health supports for young people. I've spoken to a lot of folks at Future Majority, which is a not-for-profit organization here they have a chapter here in Barrie-Innisfil. And their goal is to raise awareness for issues that are faced by young people. And most specifically, they've been campaigning talking about mental health. As a young person who has been impacted by mental health addictions, from my friends and my family, and myself being somebody that has mental health, I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD. I've got anxiety and depression, and I've been battling eating disorders. And I'm very open about this. My journey is not just for me; it's for me to share and shed light on, because I think that it's really important that we talk about these things, not just talk, take action. We've done enough talking. We need to take action. I would like to see more comprehensive supports for everybody. And that's part of the reason why I joined the NDP, because we think that mental health care should be ingrained in our healthcare system, and it should be free and it should be accessible. I personally agree with that. I think that pharmacare should also be free and accessible. I don't think that anybody should have to be spending hundreds of dollars on medication every month. I think that it should be free. I think it should be accessible. Dental care too. But talking more about things that are really affecting our community here. I mean, those are definitely affecting our community, but we need to talk about the opioid crisis. I recently lost a friend to an overdose, and unfortunately, there's just not enough support, and there's a lot of stigma surrounding addictions and mental health in Barrie-Innisfil and in Simcoe County in general. And it shouldn't be a debate as to whether or not we have a safe consumption site. We should just have safe consumption sites. And not only that, we should also decriminalize drugs. Decriminalizing drugs takes the power away from gangs. It takes the power away from drug dealers who are preying on vulnerable people. And that's a policy that the NDP is pushing, and something that I firmly believe that we should be doing. We should be looking at models from Portugal or Scandinavian countries that have decriminalized drugs. We should be looking at how we can do that and how we can do it better. We should look at Oregon. We should look at Vancouver and the work that they've been doing. If we can do it in Vancouver, in a city here in Canada, I think that we can do it across the country. I think that it's really important that we listen to people, and that we start taking these things seriously, the more that we try to displace the issues, the more that they're just going to keep growing and keep popping up elsewhere. Instead of just displacing, we need to actually address these issues. And it's not enough to just talk about them either. We need to actually take action. Mental health is something that's very important to me. Education is also something that's very important to me as a student. I'm a master's student. I'm working on creating a PhD program to bring to Lakehead as well. And I think that, yeah.
That is amazing. Okay. I'm like, I want to hear more about that too.
Absolutely. We've been talking to the social justice department at Lakehead, and a goal that they have and that we definitely share is to bring a social justice PhD program to Lakehead, specifically Thunder Bay campus. But because of the remote work and because of the interconnectability between both campuses, it would be available at the Aurelia campus too, so long as the faculty are on board. Right now the department is on board. We just need to get the faculty on board to have enough faculty to run the program similarly to the social justice master's program. And this would be one of the first PhD programs, if not the first, at Lakehead. So it would be amazing to see. Not only this, but we're also thinking about branching the interdisciplinary studies program into an intersectional studies program, because that's essentially what it is. We study women and gender studies, we study politics, we study English, we study like all of these different branches within the university. And within just general life. So I think that it would be really cool to see that branch out into intersectional studies where we're learning different theories, because we already are. So we can apply that, to a master's, to a PhD as well. And it can be kind of a through route. I know that a lot of folks, say that it's important to go to different institutions. And I do think that it's great to get a well-rounded university experience, but for some folks, it's more accessible to just stay within one institution. Like for me, I love Lakehead. I did my undergraduate there, and I'm doing my master's there too. And I think that for students that do want to stay, we should have those avenues for them to be able to do that and to continue their education. So if we can have a streamlined process from the interdisciplinary or intersectional studies program to a master's, then to a PhD, I think that would open a lot of doors for students and, set Lakehead up and above a lot of other institutions. And to have that here in Simcoe County would be amazing, because we also have a partnership with Georgian College. So we're already bridging the gap there between Aurelia and Barrie. And it would be great to see that, translate even more into other areas of Simcoe County. So education, going back to the question, is something that's really important to me. But mental health is first and foremost probably one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, why I got involved. And also the environment. We really need to focus on protecting Lake Simcoe. And we also need to look into when we're doing development and infrastructure, not only sustainable infrastructure, like for example, those new homes that were torn apart by the tornadoes. We need to really consider natural disasters in our planning and development, but we also need to consider where we're developing, how we're developing, and how that's impacting the environment. So we need to have sustainable methods of development when we're doing that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't grow our community, but we should do so sustainably, and we should do so with long-term environmental impacts in mind.
Absolutely. I love it. Oh my goodness. This is incredible, the work that you are doing, and I'm sure it will continue to do as well.
Thank you.
So what are some of the next steps in this election? And if you can maybe even shed some light in terms of maybe some of the regulations about campaigning, things that you've kind of learned that generally the general public isn't always familiar with. I was like, as I am also learning through this process and through these interviews, just even the signatures or the signs, right? But in terms of any of the regulations that you've learned through this process and going through it, do you want to share any of that?
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to share. This has been a learning experience for sure. So this is my first time running. I have been involved in campaigns in the past, but being involved and volunteering on campaigns and actually being the candidate are very different. So it's been interesting. So in terms of getting the signatures, a lot of folks didn't realize that you do need to live in the riding and you do need to be of legal voting age to sign. So those were two barriers because there are a lot of folks that are permanent residents or that live in the riding but don't necessarily have an address here. They may be renting or just visiting friends. And then there are a lot of folks that use our beaches and use our parks but don't live here. So when I was canvassing out in the parks, it was kind of weird because I would have to ask people like for their permanent address, and I know that some folks are a bit not too keen on sharing that personal information. But when we did break down those barriers and we did have those conversations and we did talk about like, no, this isn't an endorsement of me. This is just I need these forms signed so that we can practice democracy. I actually got to have some really great conversations with some folks, and we talked about policy. We talked about the NDP. We talked about all of these other things. So it did bridge the gap in some ways, but it also was a bit of a tricky process because not only did we need to get the 100 baseline, but we needed to get more than that just in case some of the signatures weren't going to be accepted. I was very fortunate that my process was very quick. I was approved the day that I brought in my signatures, but for some folks,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's amazing. That is incredible.
it was amazing. We came in with like almost 200 forms, so I think that they were just basically like, yeah, I mean, at least 100 of these got to be good. They did do their due diligence, but still,
So
it was
I didn't realize. So somebody that is renting in your riding cannot sign?
so they can,
Oh, they
if
can.
their permanent address on their ID matches their address here. So
Oh,
for
okay.
myself, for example, my permanent address is in Alcona, but I'm living in Cookstown. I could sign because my permanent address is in Innisfil regardless. But for example, my partner, who lives in Cookstown with me, could not sign because his permanent address is in Muskoka because he hasn't changed his address on his ID. But he was able to vote in our riding with a special ballot because he had proof of address. It was just because I don't know. I feel like if we had a conversation with Elections Canada, we probably could have figured something out for him to sign for me. But we had enough signatures anyways. But it was more so just for folks that don't have a permanent address in Innisfil that couldn't sign. So I don't want to, spread any misinformation here, but it was more so just if you don't have a permanent address in Innisfil, unfortunately, you aren't able to sign unless you have proof of your address, because your address just needs to match whatever they have in their records for Elections Canada. That's essentially how they do it. So, for example, for me, if I were to sign for myself or for somebody else, you actually can't sign for yourself, but if I were to sign for somebody else, they would search my name and my address to ensure that it matched the name and address that I put on that person's form. So I would put, my parents' address because that's what's on my ID, and they would run it through their database. They would say, oh, yeah, that person is true. That person is real. They live here. Okay, cool. And then they would approve that sheet of paper for whichever candidate I signed for. Yeah, it's an interesting process. They kind of walked us through it a little bit. Voting, it's a bit different because you can just come in with two pieces of ID, and if you have a lease or some sort of a rental agreement, you can vote in the area that you're living. I know sometimes it's a bit difficult, but you do need to request a special ballot for it. But Elections Canada is pretty good with that. All you need to do is just call them, ask them about their process, and they are more than happy to help people out. They actually encourage you to come in and vote at Elections Canada because it's a lot easier. So
yeah, well, and it's interesting too, because there's so many secondary homes, right? And especially during COVID, that special ballot. So some people may have an address down in Toronto, but they also have been permanently kind of living maybe at their recreational cottage, more like a home as well, especially during COVID, right? That we see way more, and I'm kind of in cottage country myself. And so a lot of the cottagers have been here all year round and they haven't really been down to the city. So I was like, I wonder where they're going to vote.
Yeah,
Right?
they would either have to request a special ballot to vote here if they have an address and proof of that, or they could just go to an Elections Canada office and vote in their own riding. That's also an option.
Right.
Again,
so how does it work for, we have such a huge high population homelessness, right? In Simcoe County. And so and if they don't have a permanent address, uh, but so you need ID and a permanent address. So what maybe are some of what could they do?
So the best option that I have heard and that I've been told to do is contact Elections Canada, whether it be via phone if you have access to one, or just by going into the office. Like for example, our office here in Barrie-Innisfil is at 491 Bryan Drive. So that would be probably the best option, because they can walk through like, okay, how do we vote if you are a homeless person and you don't have a permanent address? I know that for some folks, it's easy to have somebody come in and vouch for you. But again, the address is the barrier here. So I think that the best thing that I can advise folks to do if they are in that situation is just contact local Elections Canada office, or you can contact the Federal Elections Canada office and they can walk you through. Or if you don't have access to a phone and you can show up to an Elections Canada office, let them know the situation, have a conversation and see what can be done, because everybody has the right to vote. So I'm sure that we can figure something out.
Yeah, it's not just the homelessness, and I'm thinking of even the women that are in shelters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
And
having to reside there. And they are in that process of change, right?
yeah,
So I'm just thinking about them too, like how can we even get those women and well, not the children, but the
yeah,
women out to kind of vote. So thank you so much for that. I
yeah.
will definitely let especially our shelters, because we have right now we're in Simcoe County completely full,
Mhm.
unfortunately. So, but thank you so much for sharing that with
Absolutely.
me. Really
As long as
appreciate
there's a
it.
form of identification, somebody to vouch, and a polling location that they can go to, that they can access. I usually recommend saying bring 2 to 3 pieces of ID if you have that, and somebody to vouch for you. Those are the best things that I can do, that I can say to do, or just contact Elections Canada. They can walk you through it a bit better than I can.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I will definitely be making that call after we get off the phone.
Awesome.
So is there anything else that you have, what, I guess maybe things that you've learned, but what are some successes? What are you enjoying about this campaign in running?
Absolutely. So I think that something that I really wanted to touch on actually is just the amount of people and the amount of support that I've been getting that I didn't realize. Honestly, there are so many people that want change, they desire something different, and they're willing to talk, they're willing to listen, they're willing to have these conversations. And I think that I'm learning more about my community, I'm learning more about myself, and I'm learning more about what we can do together. A lot of folks, they hear socialist or they hear NDP and they think that that's a trigger word. They think that we're out to take away people's homes and monies and this, that, and the other thing. Like that's not the case. That's not what we're trying to do. If anything, we're just trying to make the world a better place for everybody, a fairer, more equitable place for everyone. We want everybody to have the access to the social services that they need, the services that they need, money that they need. So we just want to ensure that folks are taken care of, and I think that is first and foremost the most important thing. So for myself, I've learned that I can do anything that I set my mind to, honestly, and I think that is a really important lesson to learn. That despite the amount of, I wouldn't necessarily call it hate, but some discouraging messages that I've gotten, some comments that I've seen. Despite that, I've been able to be resilient. I've been able to push forward. I've been able to move past that. And I look at the support, and the support that I have is just amazing, and it's incredible to see the community come together in such a way. Even my parents, who are usually like very staunch conservatives, have even been looking into the NDP platform, and really it's been changing hearts and minds, especially with my grandmother living in long-term care and knowing that the NDP is one of the only parties out there that's actually really focused on long-term care and taking the profit out of long-term care. We've said that, we will continue to say that, we will do that. because I think that it's important that we take into consideration, folks that are older living in long-term care, or disabled folks that are living in long-term care that need help, and they aren't necessarily able to get the care that they need, not because we don't have amazing nurses and PSWs, because we do, but because the funding isn't there, the pay isn't high enough, and we need to pay workers, and we need to ensure that we have enough funding. So we need to take the profit out of long-term care. We need to take that away, and we need to put federal funding into that, or provincial funding, or whatever type of funding that we need. We just need to take that privatization and that profit out of long-term care, and instead focus on people and caring for people in the same way, rather than, if you have money, you can live in a luxury suite, but if you don't, then you have to share a room and share resources. Everybody should be able to access those same resources, because nobody wants to be living in that situation. Everybody wants to know that they're going to be taken care of if something goes wrong in their life, or if they're older and need that assistance. So we need to ensure that we have that available, and we have that there for people. So that's something that I've really been pushing for. I know that I'm kind of getting off track here, but I'm learning a lot.
I love, that, because we so far haven't really even touched on our seniors, right? And being an Indigenous woman, like, you need to take care of that older generation, and that. So I love, thank you for touching on that.
Absolutely. I think that it's so important that we take care of our older generations, and we take care of folks that need it. And we need to have the resources there and the funding there to do it. And unfortunately, privatized long-term care isn't benefiting most people. So we need to transition to a system that does benefit everyone, because nobody wants to be in a situation where they're not taken care of. Nobody wants to be in a situation where they're fighting every day, and their family has to advocate. Like right now, my mother is in the home every day advocating for my grandmother, and it's not because my grandmother doesn't have awesome caregivers. It's because they're not being paid enough, and they're stretched so thin, and the resources are stretched so thin, that even if they want to give my grandmother these resources, they unfortunately can't, because they need to be spread over such a large population of seniors and residents, and disabled folks in the long-term care facilities. So we need to have more resources. We need to have more funding. We need to have better pay for nurses and PSWs and healthcare workers in general. Honestly, they've been getting us through this pandemic. So we need to give them some recognition. Just calling them heroes isn't enough. We need to actually give them the recognition that they deserve, and the pay that they deserve.
I love it. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So we've touched on quite a bit in terms of the campaign and some of those policies, right, that you're wanting to make happen here in Simcoe County. Is there anything else in terms of the NDP campaign that you really wanted to highlight?
Absolutely. I think that's something really important that we should talk about right now, especially because in Barrie-Innisfil and Barrie Springwater Oromadante, there isn't a Green Party candidate. So a lot of people are asking us, how are we compensating for that, and how are we making up for that? And I just want to mention that the NDP has a really comprehensive climate action plan. We really want to focus on sustainability. We want to focus on action, and we want to make that happen now. We've been waiting too long to see climate action happen, and we can't wait any longer. We're seeing forest fires happen in the north. We're seeing things like this happen constantly, natural disasters, even pandemics. I was talking to a friend of mine who is a biologist, and he was telling me that due to the fact that our world is changing so much, and our natural environment is changing, and due to the climate emergency, it's not unlikely that we will see more pandemics like COVID-19 happen. So it's really important that we take action. We do as much as we can to mitigate this, because again, like, people's lives are on the line. So we really need to take action and do something. And I'm really proud to say that the NDP does consider this. We have taken this action, and we will continue to take this action. Regardless of whether I win or lose as well. I just want to let everybody know that I will continue to advocate. I will continue to push. And I will continue to be part of the community in many different ways. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to stop doing this, regardless of whether I win or lose. I'm going to continue to be a community advocate. I'm going to continue to push. I'm going to continue to be involved in politics, because I think that we need to see that. We need to see young women involved in politics. We need to see determination in politics. And we need to see that fighting spirit come back, because that's what we need right now. We need folks out there to advocate and to fight and to push. And I know that those are heavy words, they're scary words, but it's important because we need that right now. We need advocacy at all levels, and we need folks that are inspired and willing to make these changes happen. So that's what my goal is. That's what I want to do. Specifically in Barrie-Innisfil, I want to advocate for more comprehensive mental health supports, more comprehensive supports when it comes to environmental sustainability, and looking at environmental sustainability and climate action when we develop. And I want to ensure that everybody is taken care of, whether you are elderly, disabled, or you're just down on your luck. I want to make sure that everybody is taken care of. And we also do need to emphasize more supports and more funding for folks that are homeless or living in shelters. I really like the housing first model that Fred Victor is doing in Toronto, and I would like to see something like that brought here to Barrie-Innisfil. I'm currently doing work on food insecurity, and part of that is housing and harm reduction. So they all intertwine. They're all interconnected issues. We need to start treating them as such, and we need to start addressing these issues at the systemic root. We need to help folks. We need to help folks now. It's not just about talking about it, it's about doing it. We need action, and I'm ready to take that action.
Oh, yes, thank you. And so how is it that people can do you still need help? Like, what is there left from now until September 20th? If people would like to get involved in your campaign, what are some things that for your supporters, what can they do?
Absolutely. I think right now we need voices. We need activism. We need folks that are willing to get out there on social media and share the word, spread the word. And if folks are available to do groundwork, we have a lot of literature that needs to be handed out. I am more than happy to connect and organize folks. We usually do literature drops on weekends, but with the election so close, I think that it might be good to do some things through the week. So if folks are available and want to get involved and are eager to do so, they can contact me. I have a couple email addresses that people can contact me at. They can contact me at my personal agostcow@gmail.com, or on my NDP email, aleesha.gostkowski@ndp.ca. Another good place to reach me is just looking on my Linktree, which is Linktree/Aleesha for BI, and I can provide all these resources to be shared as well. I think that also my Facebook page is a great place to reach me. I'm constantly on there checking messages. So Aleesha Gostkowski for Barrie-Innisfil would be another great place to reach me. If all else fails, honestly, my Facebook page is the best place because everything is there. And if you message me, you're talking to me directly. I'm more than happy to talk to folks that would like to help, that would like to volunteer, to give them jobs. Sign delivery, we might need a bit more help with that, just depending on how many folks are ordering signs in the last little bit here. We will need help with sign cleanup because we do that ourselves. We're a grassroots organization. We don't leave that on the city because it costs too much money. We like to do it ourselves. And it's just not fair to put all of that burden onto the city. We like to just get out there, and that's why we track everywhere that we put signs so that we can go and pick them up afterwards.
Yeah, I didn't even think post-election. Oh my God, I'm like, wow, that must be still quite a bit of work.
Yeah, it's a bit of work, especially because we don't want to get fined for having our signs up, and we don't want to put that burden on the city to clean it up. So we would like to do that ourselves, and make sure that everything is all in order. So that's our plan. Those are the things that we need. We do also, we have a lot of different roles for volunteers that we can create and have available for folks. So if folks want to get involved, if folks are interested and just want to chat, just contact me, probably through my Facebook page. We can talk, we can find a role for you. or we can just have a conversation, because I always like hearing from people in the community. I'm always very happy to hear from the folks here who just have issues that they want to be talked about. I think that people just like to know that they're being heard, and I want everybody to know that you are heard, you are seen, and I'm here to listen to anything that you need, even post-election, even if
Excellent.
I don't win, which I
Well,
hope I do, honestly.
yes, yes. Well, I just want to say good luck and thank you so much for taking the time. And so people can get a hold of you. I'm going to also post that information on our social media and get this interview out as soon as possible. But again, Aleesha, thank you so much. Merci et miigwech for taking the time today. And I wish you all the best in the
Thank you
next
so
few
much.
weeks. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.